Hi, it's David White here, and I have another question for you. How do you recover from business mistakes? Over 20 years running my company, I made a lot of mistakes, expensive mistakes, embarrassing mistakes, the kind that cost real money and kept me up at night. I lost clients. I hired the wrong people. I launched the wrong products. I chased the wrong markets. I trusted the wrong partners. I could fill an entire book with just my mistakes, and plenty of others, people I work with, their mistakes. But here's what matters. Every single mistake was recovered by sales and income, cash from customers, new contracts, new revenue. Everyone who invested in my business got their money back and more. Not because I was particularly smart, not because I had a safety net, not because I could restructure my way out of trouble. I didn't have any access to institutional cash, but because I had a system that generated cash when I needed it most. Now, today I'm going to tell you about the mistakes I made, and I'm going to show you the only reliable way to recover from yours, because you'll make mistakes. It's guaranteed. The question is, can you recover from them? Let me start with an uncomfortable truth. You can't avoid mistakes. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how much experience you have. I don't care how careful you are. If you're running a business, mistakes occur. They may not be yours. Some will be your fault. Some will not be. Some will be bad decisions, poor judgment, ignore warning signs, hoping for the best. Some won't be your fault at all. Market shifts, unexpected competitors, economic downturns, a pandemic, perhaps. Doesn't matter whose fault it is. The result is the same. Something breaks, you have to fix it. Now, here's where most business advice fails. They'll tell you, don't make mistakes, be more careful, do more research, plan better. It's useless advice. Or they'll tell you, learn from your mistakes, fail fast, iterate quickly. Well, that's better. It still doesn't answer the real question. When you make a mistake that costs you money, real money, the kind that threatens payroll, rent, wages, or survival, how do you actually recover? Because learning from mistakes is great, but first you have to survive them. And most businesses, many business people, just don't. There's two paths to recovery. When a business makes a costly mistake, there are only two ways to recover. Path one, restructure, cut costs, lay people off, renegotiate contracts, sell assets, find investors, take on debt. And that is what big institutions often do. It's what governments do, and it's what corporations with resources do. They restructure their way out of trouble. But the other way is generate revenue, bring in new customers, sign new contracts, generate cash from operations. That's what small businesses have to do. That's what entrepreneurs do. It's what CEOs without institutional backing do. They sell their way out of trouble. And here's the critical difference. Restructuring fixes the cost side of the equation. It stops the bleeding. It buys you time, but it doesn't make you stronger. It makes you smaller, leaner, more fragile, more at risk. Now, revenue generation fixes the income side. It doesn't just stop the bleeding, it accelerates the healing. It makes you stronger and you build up better cash reserves. Big institutions can restructure because they have resources to draw on, lines of credit, investor networks, but it all needs to be paid back. Balance sheets can absorb losses. Small businesses don't necessarily have that luxury. If your business makes $1 million mistake and you don't have $1 million in reserve, you can't restructure your way out of that. You can cut costs, sure, but if costs are already lean, you're just shrinking. The only real recovery is revenue, which means the only real recovery that you can put in place first as well is relationships. Because revenue comes from customers and customers come from relationships. So let me tell you a little bit more about my mistakes. I hired people who weren't right for the roles. They looked brilliant. They weren't bad people, not because they lacked skills, but because I didn't necessarily define the role clearly enough. I lived in a world of hope. I hired for potential instead of proven ability, or I ignored warning signs in the interview process. Costs? Well, months of lost productivity, severance payments, damage to team morale, projects that had to be redone, maybe even clients that were lost. How did I recover? New clients, new contracts, revenue that covered the costs and then some. Mistake number 2, I launched products the market didn't want. I was sure we'd identified a need, sure we'd built something valuable, sure customers would line up, but they didn't. Now, what was the cost? Development time, marketing spend, opportunity cost of not focusing on what actually worked. How did I recover? Well, I still had existing clients. I strengthened those relationships. I generated revenue from what they actually needed, not what I thought they should want. Mistake number 3, I chased the wrong markets. I saw an opportunity in a market, in a sector we didn't understand. We thought we did. We thought our solution would translate. We invested time and money trying to break in. It just didn't work. Cost, well, time and money. Focus pulled away from our core market. How did I recover? We returned to the relationships we'd built over the years. The clients who knew us, trusted us, were willing to increase their spend if we gave them more value. Mistake number 4, I trusted the wrong partners, formed strategic partnerships that looked good on paper but didn't deliver in practice. Joint ventures that consumed resources without generating returns. Cost, same again. Money invested, time spent. Reputation, slightly damaged. How did I recover? Guess what? We doubled down on direct client relationships, cut out the middlemen, generated revenue directly, instead of relying on partners to deliver it. I could keep going. In 20 years, there's plenty of time to make those kind of mistakes. Different types, different costs, different lessons. But every single one was recovered the same way. Cash from customers, new business, new contracts. And eventually we cut out those additional ideas, and we doubled down on more and more relationships, because that's where we found the customers. That's how we actually generated cash. And where did those customers come from? Relationships I'd managed to build before I needed them. So here's what most CEOs don't understand about mistakes. There's a difference between surviving a mistake and recovering from one. Surviving means you didn't die. You cut costs enough to stay alive. You're still in business, but you're weaker, smaller, more fragile. One more mistake might finish you. Recovering means you're stronger after the mistake than before it. Got more revenue, more clients, more resilience. The financial services CEO I told you about in my first video, he didn't recover from his mistakes. He just survived them. Barely. He managed costs. He restructured. He optimized. But he didn't generate a new revenue. He didn't build new relationships. He didn't strengthen existing ones. So when his mistakes compounded, flat growth in a rising market, promoting his best salesperson to management, he had nothing to fall back on. No reservoir of relationships, no network he could activate, no ongoing clients he could call. He survived until he didn't. Contrast that with my experience. When I made a hiring mistake, I had clients I could call, relationships I could activate, people who would give me another project because they trusted me. When I launched a product that failed, I had revenue from existing clients that covered the loss, relationships that kept the business healthy while I fixed my mistake. When I chased the wrong market, I had a core market full of relationships I'd built over the years. I could return to them, admit I'd been distracted, and ask how I could serve them better. That's the difference between restructuring and recovering. Restructuring is what you do when you don't have relationships. Recovering is what happens when you do. So here's the question. How do you recover from business mistakes? The real answer, not the comforting platitude, but the actual mechanism. You recover by having relationships in place before you need them. Not contracts, not LinkedIn connections, not networking acquaintances, real relationships. People who know you, trust you, and will vouch for you, like family. When you make a mistake, and you will, those relationships become your recovery vehicle, your recovery system. They're the ones who refer new business. They increase their own spending. They open new doors. They provide the capital you need. They offer advice. They stand by you. But here's the catch. You can't build those relationships after you need them. You can't say, hey, we went bust, now back me. You can't make a mistake, realize you're in trouble, and then suddenly start building relationships, hoping they'll save you. It doesn't work that way. Relationships take time. Relationships mean delivering value in advance. They require constant attention. They need to be built before the crisis, not during it. So people already trust you, love you, like you. That's what I did for 20 years. I wasn't building relationships because I was worried about mistakes. I was building relationships because that's what business is. But when mistakes happened, and they happen constantly, those relationships became my recovery mechanism. And they weren't all the time. They were occasional and potential, even rare. But think about it this way, they still happen. When you make $1 million mistake and you need to generate $1 million in new revenue quickly, can you make 10 phone calls that will generate 100K each? If yes, you can recover from your mistakes. If no, you're hoping to survive them. So let's do an uncomfortable exercise right now. Think about the last significant issue you faced in your business, or think about a mistake you're afraid of making or that you've seen others make. And ask yourself, if that mistake cost you 6 months of runway, who would you call? If you needed to generate revenue quickly to cover the loss, where would it come from? How many relationships do you have that could each generate 50K in new business within 90 days? How many people in your network would take your call, listen to your situation, and actively help? Be honest. If the number is less than 10, you don't have a recovery system. You have hope. Hope that you won't make a big mistake. Hope that if you do, somehow it'll work out. Hope that you can restructure enough to survive. Hope is not a strategy. Relationships are a strategy. Revenue generation is a strategy. Building a network before you need it is a strategy. Here's what I learned over many decades. Mistakes are not optional. They're guaranteed. But recovery isn't. Most businesses don't recover. They survive for a while, then fail. And the difference between businesses that recover and businesses that just survive is this. Businesses that recover have relationships that generate revenue when it's needed most. The financial services CEO didn't have that system. When his mistakes compounded, he had nowhere to turn. 3 people left. The business is now rebuilding. Maybe they'll make it. Maybe they won't. I had a system. When my mistake happens, and they were constant, I always had somewhere to turn. People who knew me trusted me. They would give me another chance. That's not luck. It's a system. In the next video, I'm going to show you why relationships matter more than structures. Why the CEO who restructures instead of building relationships is managing themselves toward irrelevance. But first, answer this question. How do you recover from business mistakes? And if your answer isn't relationships that generate revenue, you might not be prepared for the mistakes you're about to make. I'll see you in the next video.